conscious personal growth in the way of Kaizen, continuous improvement as contentment practice. Each morning, the dedicated gardener makes countless small adjustments. A stone moved a grain's width, a branch trained a finger's breadth, understanding that magnificent transformation emerges not from dramatic intervention, but from patient, persistent refinement of what already exists. Yet the gardener who tends with conscious intention experiences something profound that the casual caretaker never knows. Every small choice becomes meaningful. Every gentle adjustment carries purpose. Every day's work weaves itself into the story of deliberate creation. In the quiet corner of an ancient Japanese temple garden, a single stone sits precisely placed beside a gently curving path. Each morning for decades, the temple keeper has adjusted this stone's position by the smallest possible increment, perhaps no more than a grain of rice width, responding to subtle changes in how light falls across the path, how weather has shifted surrounding moss, or how seasons have altered the relationship between stone and setting. To casual visitors, the stone appears unchanged from day to day, year to year. Yet the temple keeper experiences something extraordinary that observers cannot see. Each tiny adjustment carries the weight of conscious intention. Each small refinement becomes part of a larger story of deliberate craftsmanship. Each morning's work deepens his connection to the garden he has chosen to cultivate with mindful attention. This daily practice embodies something profound about human development. While growth happens naturally whether we direct it or not, conscious personal growth creates meaning, satisfaction, and identity formation that unconscious development simply cannot provide. The temple keeper's garden would evolve without his intervention, but his conscious participation transforms routine maintenance into spiritual practice, random change into purposeful creation, mere survival into meaningful living. The inevitability of human becoming. Human beings never stop growing, developing, and evolving across the entire lifespan. This represents one of the most hopeful discoveries of modern psychology. The brain continues changing throughout life. Personality can shift and develop at any age, and new capabilities emerge during every decade through the neuroplasticity that enables continued learning, adaptation, and transformation until the end of consciousness itself. Dr. Erik Erikson's groundbreaking research on psychosocial development revealed that each life stage presents new challenges, opportunities, and capacities for growth that were impossible during previous phases. The wisdom available at 70 could not have emerged at 30, not because of accumulated experience alone, but because the psychological architecture necessary for certain types of understanding develops only through time and the specific challenges each life season provides. Dr. Robert Kagan's work on adult development demonstrates that many people continue evolving through increasingly sophisticated ways of making meaning throughout their lives, developing what he calls mental complexity that enables navigation of nuanced challenges that would have overwhelmed earlier developmental stages. The capacity for paradox, ambiguity, and systems thinking often emerges only in later decades, revealing growth as lifelong rather than stopping after young adulthood as once believed. Neuroplasticity research confirms that the brain remains capable of forming new neural pathways, strengthening beneficial connections, and even generating new brain cells regardless of age. Dr. Michael Merzenich's work reveals that conscious mental training can literally reshape brain structure at any life stage, creating improved cognitive function, emotional regulation, and learning capacity that many assume naturally decline with aging. Like trees that continue growing throughout centuries, adding new rings each year while deepening their root systems and expanding their canopy, human consciousness possesses inherent drive toward complexity, wisdom, and authentic expression that operates regardless of external circumstances or conscious direction. The difference lies not in whether growth occurs, but in how much meaning, satisfaction, and identity development emerges through the process of becoming. Consider the profound difference between a wild forest that grows through random natural processes and a carefully tended garden where each element receives conscious attention and intentional cultivation. Both create beauty and serve ecological functions, yet the gardener experiences something the forest cannot provide: the deep satisfaction of conscious participation in creation. the meaning that emerges from deliberate choice, and the identity that develops through sustained commitment to nurturing what you have chosen to cultivate. The satisfaction of self-authorship. Why conscious growth creates deeper meaning. The human soul experiences profound satisfaction when we become active authors of our own development, rather than passive recipients of whatever growth randomly occurs through circumstance. This satisfaction emerges not just from better outcomes, but from the meaning-making process that conscious investment creates through what might be called the investment significance spiral. The investment meaning feedback loop reveals why deliberately chosen growth feels infinitely more satisfying than natural development that happens without our conscious participation. When you invest time, attention, and energy into your own development, you create emotional ownership that transforms neutral experiences into personally meaningful events that matter on soul level rather than remaining abstract improvements. Time investment creates biographical significance. The hours you deliberately spend developing a skill, exploring a subject, or working on emotional growth become part of your personal story in ways that random learning or accidental development never achieve. The violin practice you choose to undertake becomes your musical journey, while musical ability that emerged accidentally feels like good fortune rather than personal accomplishment. Attention investment generates importance. What you consciously attend to becomes psychologically significant through the mental energy you allocate toward it. Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow states demonstrates that experiences receiving focused attention create meaning and satisfaction that distracted or automatic experiences cannot provide, regardless of the activity's inherent value. Energy investment develops identity attachment. The effort you put into conscious growth makes the development feel authentically yours, rather than something that happened to you through favorable circumstances or natural talent. The discipline you develop through Kaizen practice becomes part of who you are, rather than simply something you do, creating identity-level satisfaction that external achievements rarely provide. The compound effect of conscious investment means that each deliberate choice to grow makes future development feel increasingly meaningful. The person who has consciously worked on emotional regulation for months finds each improvement deeply satisfying because it represents the fruition of sustained intention and effort. The same improvement occurring naturally through favorable circumstances provides temporary pleasure, but lacks the profound meaning that conscious cultivation creates. This investment meaning spiral explains why people often feel more pride in modest achievements they work toward consciously than major successes that came easily or accidentally. The garden vegetables you grew from seed through daily tending taste better than store-bought produce, not because of objective quality differences, but because your conscious investment makes every tomato carry the weight of your intention, attention, and care. The life timeline impact reveals how conscious growth moments become anchoring memories that define life chapters and create narrative coherence that random development cannot provide. When you look back on your life, the periods of deliberate growth stand out as times when you were actively crafting your identity rather than simply responding to circumstances. These consciously chosen development phases become what psychologists call crystallizing experiences. Memories that carry special significance because they represent moments when you deliberately shaped who you were becoming. The decision to learn meditation, commit to therapy, develop a creative practice, or work systematically on relationship skills becomes a defining story element rather than a forgotten life detail. The paradox of effort and ease reveals itself through conscious growth. While the process requires intention and energy, the meaning it creates makes the effort feel worthwhile rather than burdensome. Like the temple keeper who finds bond rather than drudgery in his daily stone adjustments, conscious growth transforms what could be work into what feels like authentic self-expression and purposeful living. Unconscious versus conscious development. The critical distinction. Understanding the difference between unconscious and conscious development proves essential for anyone seeking not just growth, but the deep satisfaction that emerges from deliberately authoring your own becoming. Both types of development serve important functions, yet they create entirely different experiences of meaning, agency, and identity formation. Unconscious development happens naturally through life experiences, challenges, and circumstances that shape you, whether you direct the process or not. You develop resilience through surviving difficulties, gain social skills through relationship experiences, and build capabilities through work demands or family responsibilities. This growth occurs automatically as adaptive responses to environmental pressures, much like how trees develop strength through weathering storms or root systems through seeking water and nutrients. While unconscious development provides essential adaptation and learning, it often feels like something that happens to you rather than something you create. The resilience you develop through surviving a difficult childhood feels different from the emotional regulation skills you consciously cultivated through therapy or meditation practice. Both serve you, but only the conscious development carries the satisfaction of deliberate choice and personal agency. Conscious development involves deliberate choice to grow in specific directions through intentional practices, learning, and self-directed change efforts. This might include choosing therapy to understand relationship patterns, taking classes to develop new capabilities, practicing meditation to improve emotional regulation, or systematically working to change habitual thought patterns that no longer serve your authentic development. The distinction appears not in the type of growth, but in the level of conscious choice and sustained attention you bring to the development process. Reading books naturally expands your understanding, but consciously studying subjects that align with your authentic interests and development goals creates meaning that casual reading cannot provide. The sculptor metaphor illustrates this beautifully. Life provides the chisel blows that shape you through experience. But conscious development means you guide the hand that holds the chisel. You cannot control what stone you are given or prevent all shaping forces, but you can participate consciously in how those forces create the sculpture of your becoming. Dr. Robert Kegan's research on intentional change theory reveals that people who engage consciously with their own development experience greater satisfaction, more coherent identity formation, and better outcomes than those who simply adapt to circumstances without deliberate growth intention. The meaning emerges not just from the changes themselves, but from the sense of agency and authorship that conscious choice creates. The integration of both approaches proves most beneficial. Using unconscious development as information about what life is teaching you, then applying conscious choice to amplify beneficial growth while redirecting patterns that don't serve your authentic development. The person who notices anger arising frequently, unconscious information, might choose therapy or mindfulness training about unconscious development to work with that pattern skillfully. This integration connects beautifully to your earlier work on conscious creation and intention setting. Conscious personal growth represents the application of those principles to your own becoming, making development another domain where conscious choice can create more satisfying outcomes than leaving everything to chance or circumstance. Kaizen as conscious growth methodology, the temple keeper's wisdom. Having established conscious personal growth as both natural human birthright and source of profound satisfaction, we now explore Kaizen as perhaps the most effective methodology for sustainable conscious development. The Japanese principle of continuous improvement provides practical approaches to personal growth that honor both the human need for meaningful development and the realistic constraints of daily life. The temple keeper's patient attention to minute refinement embodies Kaizen, the philosophy recognizing how small, continuous improvements create transformations that dramatic interventions rarely achieve. This approach aligns perfectly with conscious growth principles because it makes development sustainable rather than overwhelming, while ensuring that every small choice contributes meaningfully to your larger story of deliberate becoming. The genius of Kaizen for conscious growth lies in understanding how microscopic improvements bypass the psychological resistance that major personal overhauls inevitably trigger. Your mind naturally rebels against dramatic transformation because it feels dangerous and unsustainable. But tiny conscious improvements slip past internal defenses like morning mist through garden gates, creating change that feels safe while still moving you deliberately toward your chosen development direction. Unlike Western approaches that often pursue dramatic breakthroughs or complete system overhauls, Kaizen emerged from understanding that when changes feel manageable and non-threatening, they integrate naturally into existing patterns while still creating meaningful forward movement toward authentic improvement. This proves especially important for conscious growth because sustainability determines whether development becomes lasting identity change or temporary improvement that fades when life becomes busy or challenging. Micro-investments in conscious development create the meaning spiral discussed earlier while remaining achievable within any life circumstances. Rather than waiting for perfect conditions or large time blocks for personal growth, Kaizen enables continuous conscious development through choices so small they can be implemented regardless of external constraints. Consider someone who wants to develop greater emotional regulation. Instead of committing to hour-long meditation sessions that feel overwhelming and unsustainable, they might begin taking 3 conscious breaths before responding to stressful situations. This micro-practice requires no additional time, fits into any schedule, yet represents conscious choice to develop emotional capabilities rather than simply reacting automatically to circumstances. The compound effect of micro-conscious choices reveals itself over months and years as tiny daily investments in deliberate growth accumulate into extraordinary transformation. The person who places their hand on their heart for 3 seconds whenever they feel self-critical gradually develops identity as someone who naturally offers themselves compassion, making continued self-kindness feel effortless rather than forced. This process, which psychologists call behavioral confirmation, involves gradually becoming someone for whom desired behaviors feel automatic rather than requiring constant willpower. Each small conscious choice reinforces your emerging sense of self while building genuine capacity for sustained positive change that feels authentic rather than imposed. Systems over goals, creating conscious growth architecture. Perhaps the most profound insight underlying Kaizen philosophy for conscious development involves shifting attention from specific outcomes toward improvement systems that create conditions where desired growth emerges naturally. This represents a fundamental reframe that aligns perfectly with conscious creation principles while making personal development sustainable and intrinsically satisfying. Traditional goal-setting approaches often create anxiety and perfectionism that undermine the very growth they're designed to promote. When your satisfaction depends on achieving specific outcomes by particular deadlines, development becomes pressure-filled obligation rather than joyful conscious choice, transforming what should be meaningful personal growth into another performance metric that generates stress. Conscious growth systems focus on creating consistent conditions that support ongoing development rather than demanding specific achievements within predetermined timeframes. Like a gardener who creates optimal soil conditions, appropriate watering schedules, and sufficient light exposure while trusting that healthy plants will naturally flourish within that environment, conscious growth systems trust that beneficial development emerges reliably from supportive conditions. Someone wanting to develop greater creativity might create systems like keeping a daily creative journal, spending 15 minutes weekly in art supply stores, scheduling monthly museum visits, or maintaining afternoon walks without phone distractions. These systems create conditions where creative insights and motivation naturally emerge without demanding specific creative outputs or breakthrough moments. The satisfaction of process over outcome aligns perfectly with conscious growth principles because it makes daily choices meaningful, independent of distant results. Each journal entry, museum visit, or contemplative walk carries intrinsic value as conscious investment in your development, rather than feeling worthwhile only if it leads to particular creative achievements. This approach generates sustainable motivation because systems reward you daily through the satisfaction of conscious choice rather than requiring you to wait months or years for goal achievement to feel good about your efforts. The meaning emerges from the process of conscious development itself rather than depending on external validation or specific accomplishments. Identity-based systems prove especially powerful for conscious growth because they focus on becoming the type of person you want to be rather than achieving particular outcomes. Instead of setting a goal to write a book, you might create systems that support becoming someone who writes consistently. Instead of pursuing fitness goals, you develop systems that support becoming someone who moves their body regularly and mindfully. This identity focus creates profound satisfaction because it aligns with conscious growth's deeper purpose, not just improving specific capabilities, but consciously authoring who you are becoming through daily choices that reflect your authentic values and developmental intentions. The ripple effects of conscious personal growth. Individual conscious development creates expanding circles of influence that affect family members, colleagues, and community connections through unconscious behavioral modeling and shifted relationship dynamics. Mirror neuron research reveals how small changes in your emotional regulation, communication patterns, or authentic self-expression unconsciously influence others through neurological systems designed to facilitate social coordination. When someone begins responding to their family's frustration with slightly more patience, just pausing for one conscious breath before reacting, their entire household's stress levels often decrease. Other family members start adopting similar approaches without conscious recognition of what has changed. Small conscious improvements create social contagion effects that serve collective well-being while preventing self-centered focus that purely individual development can sometimes create. The modeling effect of conscious growth proves especially powerful because it demonstrates possibilities rather than demanding change. When others observe someone choosing conscious development practices, they witness evidence that personal growth remains available regardless of age, circumstances, or past patterns. This modeling provides inspiration and permission for others' growth without creating pressure or judgment about their current choices. Conscious growth as service reveals how individual development serves purposes larger than personal enhancement, transforming improvement from potentially selfish activity into contribution to family and community welfare through the inevitable influence that authentic personal development creates. The person who consciously develops emotional regulation serves everyone they interact with through increased patience, clearer communication, and more stable presence during stressful situations. This service dimension connects conscious growth to later chapters on meaningful contribution, showing how personal development naturally extends toward collective benefit when approached with authentic intention rather than ego enhancement or competitive advantage seeking. Age-transcendent conscious development. One of the most liberating discoveries about conscious personal growth involves recognizing that development opportunities continue expanding throughout every life decade rather than diminishing with age. Contemporary research on successful aging reveals that people who maintain conscious growth orientation often experience their most satisfying and meaningful development during later life phases when external pressures decrease and authentic priorities become clearer. The liberation of life stage thinking frees you from cultural assumptions that significant personal growth must happen during youth or that major life changes become inappropriate after certain ages. Dr. Gene Cohen's research on creativity and aging demonstrates that many people discover their most authentic creative expression during later decades, while others find their greatest emotional wisdom or spiritual development after age 60. Conscious growth adaptation means that development practices evolve to match your changing energy patterns, interests, and life circumstances, while maintaining commitment to continued conscious becoming. The physical challenges that supported growth during young adult might transform into intellectual pursuits during middle age, then into spiritual exploration during later years, with each phase offering unique opportunities for meaningful development. Someone who developed discipline through athletic training during their 20s might transfer that conscious growth capacity toward artistic practice during their 40s, then toward contemplative practices during their 60s. The specific focus changes, but the underlying commitment to conscious development provides continuity and meaning across all life transitions. The wisdom of accumulated conscious growth reveals itself as decades of small daily choices compound into profound personal transformation that could never have emerged through passive adaptation alone. The person who has practiced conscious emotional regulation for 20 years possesses capabilities and perspectives that represent genuine wisdom rather than just accumulated experience. This long-term perspective provides hope and motivation for sustained conscious growth practices. The Kaizen approaches you. Implement today will compound over years and decades into personal transformation that enables contribution, meaning, and satisfaction that remain invisible during early phases of development, but represent the ultimate fruition of conscious choice to participate actively in your own becoming. Integration with conscious creation. The compound effect of intentional living. The conscious personal growth explored in this chapter represents the natural evolution of the conscious creation and intention-setting principles you established in earlier parts of your journey. When conscious choice extends from external goal achievement toward internal development, you begin experiencing the compound effects of intentional living across all domains of existence. Conscious growth as conscious creation applied inward shows how the same principles that enable effective goal achievement and life design also serve personal development with even more profound satisfaction. Creating external circumstances provides temporary pleasure and practical benefits, but creating yourself through conscious growth generates meaning and identity satisfaction that external achievements simply cannot provide. The integration of inner and outer conscious creation reveals how personal development and external goal achievement support each other synergistically, rather than competing for limited time and energy. The emotional regulation you develop through conscious growth enables more effective external creation, while achieving meaningful external goals provides confidence that supports continued personal development. Micro-intentions for macro transformation applies Kaizen principles to conscious creation, showing how small daily intentions compound into extraordinary life changes over time. Instead of overwhelming intention-setting sessions that create pressure and often lead to abandonment, continuous small conscious choices create sustainable momentum toward both personal growth and external achievement. The person who sets micro-intentions like, "I choose to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively in one situation today," gradually develops identity as someone who naturally makes conscious choices, enabling larger intentional living without the resistance that dramatic change attempts typically generate. The satisfaction progression reveals how conscious growth provides foundation for all other conscious creation efforts. When you experience the deep meaning that emerges from consciously developing yourself, external achievements become expressions of authentic identity rather than attempts to create worth or escape inadequacy feelings. This progression connects to upcoming chapters on meaningful contribution and service, showing how conscious personal development naturally extends toward own purposes larger than individual enhancement, when your growth serves authentic becoming rather than ego enhancement or competitive advantage seeking. The art of enough, sustainable conscious growth. Perhaps the most crucial balance for healthy conscious development involves recognizing when improvement efforts begin creating stress rather than supporting authentic development. This requires developing sensitivity to the difference between productive challenge that serves growth and overwhelming pressure that generates resistance or transforms meaningful development into compulsive optimization. True conscious growth feels sustainable, kind, and aligned with your natural rhythms rather than demanding constant enhancement or creating anxiety when development practices are interrupted. When improvement becomes compulsive, when you cannot rest or enjoy current circumstances while constantly seeking optimization, conscious growth has likely transformed from beneficial practice into anxiety-producing self-improvement addiction. Signs that conscious development has become unbalanced include inability to appreciate current life circumstances, anxiety when growth routines are interrupted, using personal development achievements for identity validation rather than authentic becoming, and loss of spontaneity through excessive focus on optimization rather than present moment engagement with life as it actually unfolds. The practice of enough for conscious growth involves regular gentle assessment of whether current development practices serve genuine well-being or have become mechanical routines disconnected from authentic development needs. Sometimes the most revolutionary act of self-care involves pausing improvement efforts to simply appreciate who you have already become through previous conscious choices. Seasonal rhythms in conscious development honor the natural cycles that affect your capacity for growth-focused attention. Some life periods naturally support intensive personal development, while others require maintenance of existing capabilities while attending to external demands or simply resting from active improvement to integrate previous growth. The temple keeper's wisdom about timing reveals itself in knowing when to adjust the stone and when to simply appreciate its current position. Conscious growth includes developing sensitivity to when active development serves your authentic becoming and when contentment with current development represents the most conscious choice available. This balance prevents conscious growth from becoming another source of pressure while maintaining the satisfaction and meaning that emerges from deliberately participating in your own becoming. Like all conscious choices, the decision about when to focus on active development and when to practice contentment with current growth represents an opportunity for authentic self-expression rather than following external rules about optimal self-improvement. In Integration, the Eternal Student's Conscious Garden. The integration of conscious personal growth with Kaizen methodology creates what might be called contemplative development, a way of growth that honors both spiritual wisdom about human becoming and practical effectiveness of continuous improvement. Like the temple keeper who has learned to find profound meaning in the smallest daily adjustments, you can develop capacity to experience deep satisfaction through conscious participation in your own unfolding. Monthly conscious growth reflection provides regular opportunity to appreciate how small daily choices have contributed to your ongoing becoming while identifying areas where continued conscious development might serve your authentic expression. Notice changes in your capacity to respond to challenges, the quality of your relationships, and your general sense of life satisfaction that have emerged through sustained conscious choice rather than random circumstance. Pay attention to how your investment of time, attention, and energy in conscious development has created meaning and biographical significance that passive adaptation could never provide. Celebrate the identity changes that have emerged through small daily choices, recognizing how you have actively authored aspects of who you are becoming, rather than simply adapting to whatever circumstances provided. Seasonal Conscious Development Assessment examines whether improvement efforts continue serving authentic growth or have become anxiety-producing optimization, disconnected from genuine developmental needs. What would you lose or risk if desired improvements actually occurred? Often, resistance to change serves hidden psychological needs that deserve recognition and honoring while still enabling meaningful development. Annual Perspective on Conscious Becoming provides opportunity to appreciate how accumulated micro-improvements and sustained conscious attention have enhanced your capacity to navigate life's natural challenges while maintaining baseline contentment. Consider how small daily practices have created options, skills, and perspectives that serve both current satisfaction and future resilience. The goal involves developing confidence in your capacity to create meaningful personal transformation through gentle, consistent attention to authentic development. When approached with patience and self-compassion, conscious growth becomes natural expression of your commitment to becoming the most authentic version of yourself through small daily choices that honor both who you are and who you are consciously becoming. The compound effect of decades of conscious choice reveals the ultimate promise of this work, that sustained attention to conscious personal development creates profound life satisfaction, unavailable through passive adaptation or external achievement alone. The meaning that emerges from knowing you have actively participated in crafting your own character, capabilities, and authentic expression provides foundation for all other forms of contentment and contribution. Like the temple keeper who finds profound satisfaction in his daily stone adjustments, not because they create dramatic visible change, but because they represent conscious participation in creating beauty and harmony. Your commitment to conscious personal growth through Kaizen principles transforms daily life from something that happens to you into ongoing opportunity for meaningful self-expression and deliberate becoming. The path of conscious development reveals that the most profound transformations often emerge not from dramatic intervention, but from patient attention to incremental refinement, not from forcing revolutionary shifts, but from allowing natural development to unfold through countless moments of conscious choice and compassionate self-treatment that honor the deep wisdom of gradual, sustainable growth guided by authentic intention rather than external pressure. Through conscious personal growth supported by Kaizen wisdom, you transform from passive recipient of whatever development circumstances provide into active author of your own becoming, creating meaning, satisfaction, and identity formation that serves both individual flourishing and the larger purposes toward which authentic development naturally tends when approached with genuine intention and sustained commitment to participating consciously in the magnificent unfolding of human potential. Part 4. Integration, the conscious garden of deliberate becoming. Through the wisdom of Part 4, you have discovered the profound secret that transforms ordinary human development into extraordinary satisfaction. While growth happens naturally throughout life, whether you direct it or not, conscious participation in your own becoming creates meaning, identity formation, and deep contentment that passive adaptation simply cannot provide. Like the ancient gardener who tends his plot with the same wonder after 40 years, while knowing that each conscious choice contributes to deliberate creation rather than random change, you have learned to approach life as an opportunity for conscious self-authorship that finds profound satisfaction in the very process of deliberately becoming who you choose to be. Your exploration of conscious personal growth has revealed how directing your inevitable development creates the investment meaning spiral. The time, attention, and energy you consciously invest in your own becoming generates significance that transforms neutral experiences into personally meaningful events that matter on soul level. You've discovered that the violin practice you choose to undertake becomes your musical journey, while musical ability that emerged accidentally feels like good fortune rather than personal accomplishment. The way of Kaizen has shown you that sustainable conscious development happens not through forcing dramatic transformation, but through the temple keeper's patient attention to incremental refinements that accumulate imperceptibly into extraordinary results. You've learned to trust the power of small, conscious choices that bypass psychological resistance while creating identity-level changes that make positive behaviors feel natural rather than forced. Your journey through lifelong learning has revealed how conscious curiosity transforms every experience into opportunity for deeper understanding, while beginner's mind prevents expertise from becoming stagnation. You've discovered that difficulties often contain seeds of breakthrough understanding when approached with conscious learning intention, and that true wisdom develops through patient engagement with whatever initially challenges your carefully constructed understanding. Together, these approaches create what might be called conscious developmental mastery, a way of growth that honors both the spiritual wisdom of conscious choice and the pragmatic effectiveness of continuous improvement. You've discovered how conscious investment in your own development creates meaning unavailable through passive adaptation, how systems-focused thinking enables sustainable motivation beyond specific achievements, and how gentle self-compassion serves authentic becoming more effectively than harsh self-criticism. The integration of conscious growth principles with Kaizen methodology reveals development as both spiritual practice and practical life skill. Like Brother Thomas, who learned as much from seasons of conscious attention during drought as from years of abundance, you've developed capacity to find growth opportunities in all circumstances while maintaining the temple keeper's dedication to small daily choices that gradually create perfect harmony between who you are and who you're consciously becoming. The compound effect of decades of conscious choice reveals the ultimate promise of this work, that sustained attention to conscious personal development creates profound life satisfaction, unavailable through external achievement or passive adaptation alone. The meaning that emerges from knowing you have actively participated in crafting your own character, capabilities, and authentic expression provides foundation for all other forms of contentment and contribution. This foundation of conscious growth, where development becomes deliberate self-authorship and improvement becomes meaningful identity formation, prepares you for the sophisticated work ahead in Part 5. Having established both the eternal student's wonder and the conscious growth practitioner's patience, you're ready to discover how systematic practices can elevate your baseline experience from adequate to genuinely satisfying, creating inner conditions where contentment emerges naturally through ordinary engagement with life rather than requiring perfect circumstances. The garden of your conscious becoming continues to flourish through this marriage of deliberate choice and gentle improvement, where every day offers new opportunities for meaningful self-expression and small refinements to make in the endless, joyful work of conscious development that serves both individual authenticity and collective flourishing. through the natural extension of personal growth toward purposes larger than individual enhancement. Integration practice. The conscious developer's wisdom. Conscious growth recognition. Each month reflect on how your deliberate choices to grow have created meaning and biographical significance that passive adaptation could never provide. Notice identity changes that have emerged through conscious investment rather than random circumstance. Investment and meaning assessment. Weekly, identify moments when you consciously invested time, attention, or energy in your development and observe how this investment created significance beyond the actual improvement achieved. Celebrate the meaning-making process itself as much as specific growth outcomes. Conscious versus unconscious development. Awareness. Regularly distinguish between growth that happens automatically through circumstance and development you're consciously directing through intention and practice. Appreciate both while recognizing the unique satisfaction that conscious choice creates. Self-authorship, appreciation, seasonally acknowledge how your commitment to conscious personal growth has enabled you to participate actively in crafting who you're becoming rather than simply adapting to whatever life circumstances provide. Notice the deep contentment this authorship creates. Kaizen conscious growth integration. Daily identify one small way you can consciously invest in your development through micro-choices that feel manageable while contributing meaningfully to your larger story of deliberate becoming.